Chapter 26. Sergeant or Higher. Vieille Cotteret, 1789. Thomas assumed the hardest part of forcing Claude to listen to him would be circumventing the man's skill for avoidance. But he was wrong. Since Thomas had arrived in Vieille Cotteret, the Hôtel de l'Écu had served as a respite from the outside world. But recently, there had been increasingly frequent visits from Parisian asylum seekers, their bursting carriages brimming with precious possessions. Each aristocratic arrival brought an identifiable sense of urgency in their desperate bids for sanctuary from the gathering storm of revolution. In an extraordinary upheaval of centuries of historical precedent, the National Assembly abolished the nobility. Suddenly, the safety and privilege that had always been afforded to the upper classes had been pulled out from beneath them, placing the most powerful members of the French elite in grave danger of persecution by the newly empowered revolutionaries. Each new refugee en route to London or Vienna heightened the anxiety across Vieille Cotteret. Thomas increasingly found himself politically at odds with the pretentious fugitive nobility who disrupted the peace at his hallowed Hôtel de l'Écu. Thomas was not alone in this sentiment. In addition to the labourés, many of the lower-ranking dragoons had lost their patience with the entrenched entitlements of the aristocracy. Alcoholically emboldened, soldiers squared off against nobles in verbal sparring matches over the news of the day. Claude and Marie-Louise frequently found themselves caught between these arguments, by nature of their positions in the tavern. Generally, Claude preferred to deal with the nobility himself, but Roland had sent him on an errand this evening, leaving Marie-Louise on her own. Meanwhile, Thomas sat silently at the bar, rehearsing how he would approach Claude to ask for his daughter's hand. The night had been relatively quiet until a count, who had been seated with his wife and teenage son, began causing trouble over the stew. "Tavern maid," the count called loudly. Marie-Louise approached obediently. "Yes," she asked politely. "You call this food?" He pushed his plate across the table with disgust. Thomas began to stand, ready to defend his maiden, but she stopped him with a sharp look. "I can handle myself, soldier," she said calmly, never taking her eyes off the snobbish count. "You ordered the stew, that is what I served you." The man turned to his son. "Do you see this impudence? How she speaks to me as if they have already won this war." The teenager scoffed loudly. A sly smile curved into the corners of Marie-Louise's lips as she stared icily at the count. "I am not the one running." Her voice held a pointed staccato. The man was taken aback at her response. He slammed his hands on the table, causing the plate to crash onto the floor. "These conveners have no understanding of their place." His voice dripped with denigration as he looked around the room to rally the dragoons per his birthright. "Will you allow this wench to speak to me like that?" There were nearly 10 dragoons who had been enjoying their suppers when this all began, but no soldier arose to answer his call. The 6th Regiment had grown fond of this tavern and didn't take kindly to people who insulted its proprietors. Marie-Louise raised her chin and straightened herself like a church steeple. "If you do not like your food, sir, you may seek out another establishment that suits your tastes better. Here, this is how we serve our stew. We make it the exact same for you as we do for any citizen who seeks comfort inside our doors." The nobleman's face contorted at the audacity of a woman holding her ground. His infuriated grip upon the table was making his alabaster knuckles appear scarlet. "Monsieur," she said slowly, "I fear you do not appreciate the gravity of what has presumably brought you into our lovely hamlet in the first place. You are flawlessly demonstrating to everyone here how easy it is for a man of means to dismiss the grievances of those who suffer. Suffering is inevitable, the Count spat. Anyone who insists otherwise has not lived. Your kind are so certain that wealth is a shield against pain, but your ignorance is showing. My own family is hurting, and it is because malcontents like you believe yourselves to be above the law, above the king, perhaps even above God himself. When Allah causes starvation, when His Majesty's parties create the burden of famine and taxation. She paused. You have eyes, monsieur, but you cannot see. The children of France are starving. I appreciate that you arrived here tonight out of concern for your family. In that vein, you must realize that as you flee to protect those whom you love, we rise for the same reason. The man stood up, angrily, his chair tipping over behind him. He moved within inches of Marie-Louise. He raised his right hand, ready to strike her in the middle of the tavern. Thomas could no longer obey her wishes to stand down. He leapt from his stool and took several steps in her direction. Thomas, stop, she ordered. I can handle a quarrelsome drunkard. I do not appreciate the way he is speaking to you, Thomas said hotly. I am not a damsel in need of your sword. Stand down. He froze obediently, but he glared at the Count with eyes full of fury. What is happening in this world? I am arguing with a girl and a gorilla in a military costume. This is France. Have none of you any shame? What sort of self-righteous idiot gave this animal permission to wear the colors? Even the Count's powdered makeup was no longer strong enough to cover the flushes of red in his face. The Queen, a voice from the corner of the room said flatly. Thomas quickly turned to see who had spoken up. It was Etienne, but he was not alone. Several soldiers around the tavern had stood up in their seats, many with hands resting on their scabbards. The Queen, the Count sneered. Yes. And of the dragoons, he is Her Majesty's finest, so I believe that tempting him, or even Mademoiselle Labouré, who, as you can see, is rather a force unto herself, is a mistake you will regret deeply. Etienne, rarely one to indulge in theatrics, let his words land with the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd just outplayed a man far too accustomed to winning. Damn you all! None of you have any idea what is coming, do you? You people do not rule France. You never will. No matter how hard you fight, you will never have it in your blood to matter in this world. There is a way to things. There always has been, and I can't wait until you choke on the retribution that will come. He turned to his family. Come, he barked, as he stormed up the stairs that ran along the side of the tavern. His son glared brazenly at Marie-Louise before following his father obediently. The Countess, however, picked up her spoon to continue her meal. Once the Count was out of earshot, she looked up at Marie-Louise. I apologize about my husband. He has been sensitive towards our sex since the March on Versailles. What March on Versailles? Marie-Louise was suddenly extraordinarily interested in the Countess. You haven't heard? This really is a small town. Marie-Louise looked at her intently. The Countess sighed. A group of women in Paris, the Society of Revolutionary Republican Women, have been very active recently. What are they doing? Many things. They have protested the price of grain, led salon discussions. They even armed themselves to aid the rebels. A woman's militia, from what I am told. But don't be excited about it, please. I admire your grit. My husband can be exasperating, but those women are an embarrassment to our gentle sex. If they were to succeed, France would crumble beyond repair. How? Marie-Louise was listening with bated breath. They are horribly destructive. It is a pity. As a woman, I would have wished to support them. I appreciate their courage. But they fight in the streets and brawl in taverns. Their methods are ungodly and undignified. The Countess stared down her nose at Marie-Louise, who was now leaning across the table as if she wanted to sit down beside her. Marie-Louise could barely contain her excitement. But for women to find a voice in politics, to have a purpose, to be so unencumbered. The Countess groaned. She seemed genuinely uncertain if she saw Marie-Louise as an annoyance or an inspiration. Honestly, even if I could support them, I fear my title is not well regarded among their numbers. Thank you for dinner. I will ensure you get paid before we depart for the ports tomorrow. The Countess rose and quietly pushed in her chair, but made no move to retrieve the one her husband had overturned. With calm precision, she wrapped her bread in a cloth kerchief and followed him upstairs. Marie-Louise rushed over to Thomas and sat down at the bar, completely ignoring the spilled stew that was seeping into the cracks of the wooden floor. Did you hear her? The women in Paris are organizing for the revolution. I'm not entirely sure the good lady felt nearly as excited about that, Thomas replied. She's in a complicated situation, but the Countess isn't really my concern. I want to know more about this Society of Women. Have you heard of them? Never. Thomas was a little worried about where this conversation was turning. He knew Marie-Louise well enough to realize that he needed to pivot the discussion quickly, so he stood up and leaned over the bar to grab a towel for the Count's mess. You don't have to do that, Thomas. It is my pleasure, mon âme. He walked over to the table and wiped up the stew from the floor. Thank you, she said appreciatively, as she was waved away by another patron. She was distracted for now, but Thomas could tell that her mind was fixed on the Countess's words. Finally, just over an hour later, her father returned. The tavern had calmed substantially as it was getting late. Thomas was eager to speak with her father, but he wasn't the only one vying for Claude's attention. I want to go to Paris, Marie-Louise declared firmly as she cleaned the last table. Out of the question, Claude responded without hesitation. Father, please. I can't just sit here pouring drinks and serving food when there are women in Paris leading marches and boycotts. They are doing something meaningful. I can't just wait tables until I die. I won't. Claude shook his head adamantly. It's too dangerous. But, Father, I can help. We both know that you can help by staying safe in Vieille-Cotterêts, Claude countered. There's plenty of work to be done here without rushing into the chaos of Paris. The work here is not enough. I need to be in Paris. Claude's jaw tightened. And I need my daughter alive and well. I already lost your mother. I will not lose you too. Marie-Louise turned desperately to Thomas. Please, you understand. Tell him how important this is. Thomas nearly choked. He felt Claude's eyes piercing him. Marie-Louise, Thomas began gently. I understand why you want to go. Truly I do, but your father is right. Marie-Louise's face fell. You too? You're siding with him? We are siding with you. I know you may not see it, but we cannot bear the thought of something happening to you. You saw how I handled that count. I can take care of myself. I thought you believed in the cause, believed in me. Tears were brimming in her eyes. We are at war, Marie-Louise. You know we both believe in the revolution, but the cost you suggest is too great. Her jaw clenched tightly. I can't believe you two. Thomas' heart felt as if it had fallen into his stomach. We can find other ways to support the cause, ways that don't put you in immediate danger, Thomas pleaded. Listen to him, Claude interjected. We agree with your intentions, but Marie-Louise turned away angrily. You don't understand. You have privileges simply by your right to wear trousers, whereas I am resigned to wait around here as foolish men flail their swords for selfish reasons. In Paris, women have a voice. You would both deny that to me. Claude reached out to her. We're only trying to protect you. I don't accept your protection. She stormed out of the tavern, her footsteps echoing behind her. Thomas flinched as the door slammed shut, and then he and Claude were left in the stillness of the empty room. Even Thomas' breath felt heavy as her words rang through his mind. Claude let out a pained sigh, his shoulders slumping slightly as he sat down next to Thomas and leaned against the bar. Thank you, Thomas Alexandre, Claude said quietly. I know how much that cost you. Thomas nodded. His thoughts were caught in a whirlwind. She had never been angry with him before. Claude reached over the bar and grabbed a bottle of wine and a couple glasses from underneath the counter. He uncorked the Bordeaux and poured it into the cups. The wine splashed out a little in Claude's distracted state. She has always been headstrong, ever since she was a little girl. It is rare that one can see in a little boy the promise of a man, but one can almost always see in a little girl the threat of a woman. That's one of the things about my daughter that gives me the most pride, but it also terrifies me, especially now. Thomas took a long sip, letting the tannins rest on his tongue. I can't imagine how painful that feels to her. To have so much passion, but no way to channel it. This isn't the first time I've been forced to clip her wings. She will always reach for the fire, without fear of getting burned. She has been that way since her mother died. Thomas nodded quietly and traced his finger around the base of the wine glass. Claude turned to face Thomas and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. I appreciate you, Thomas Alexandre, more than you know. It's not easy to stand against her when she's like this. I can see how much she means to you. Actually, Monsieur Labouret, formality felt appropriate for the task at hand. Thomas cleared his throat. I've been trying to speak alone with you for some time, and although this really doesn't feel like the right moment, I feel compelled to ask. Thomas could feel his hands trembling slightly, so he pressed them into the wood of the bar to mask his nerves. Claude sighed and took a large swig of his wine. I know what you are going to ask. You do? Of course. The whole town knows. Oh. Thomas felt slightly embarrassed. Is that why you have avoided speaking alone with me? Thomas, you give a father a lot to consider. You are a good person. There is no doubt there. You are polite, kind, and I know you will give your life to ensure Marie-Louise is safe and cared for. I will, I promise, Thomas replied eagerly. But you are also a risk in more ways than one. My skin, Thomas groaned. I know, but in the colonies, interracial marriages are very common. My own parents loved across those lines. Thomas felt a little guilty as the half-truth left his tongue. Your skin is a consideration, but equality is more accepted now. I actually am far more fearful of your title. Monsieur, you are a marquis. Before this revolution began, that would have been an incredible advantage. But today, so long as this government lives, you will have a target on your back. I was disinherited, Thomas said. I don't even go by my family name anymore. I know, Claude said sadly. It is only that, no matter how fond I am of you, I will always love my daughter more. I would never ask otherwise. I have no doubt of your intentions, Thomas Alexandre, but you must understand my position as a father. Monsieur Labouré, you do not need to convince me of the consequences of my request. I bear them with full knowledge of the responsibility. I love her with all my heart, and I am committed to providing for her and building a future together. Claude sighed wearily. I believe you, Thomas, and I have no doubt of your sincerity. I have come to trust you as I would my own son, but I am calculating your proposal against the realities of our world. As much as I wish it were otherwise, this problem is twofold, and even contradictory in nature. You are right. You are no longer a marquis, and perhaps that truly is for the best in France right now. But if you have no wealth or title, and your skin closes doors that your intellect would open for others, I must be cautious. It is not fair, but this is my daughter's livelihood. Thomas' jaw tightened as he met Claude's eyes. I will not let those barriers stand in our way, Claude. I will prove myself worthy of Marie-Louise's hand in marriage. You have my word. Claude regarded him for a moment, his expression softening. You are a remarkable man, but how in good conscience can I allow my daughter to marry without the assurance of security and stability? Thomas stood up from his stool and straightened his coat formally. I will achieve the rank of sergeant or higher. I swear it to you. His voice was unwavering and resolute. Claude chuckled. My friend, if this world were a fairer place, you'd be leading the army. Thomas regarded him sternly. I intend to, fair or not. I'll find a way. For her. Do I have your blessing? A silence washed over them. Claude looked at him thoroughly, as if trying to determine his worth in the way one examines priceless art. Claude didn't respond. Monsieur Labouré, please, I need you to believe that I will do this. If I can move one heart, who is to say that I can't move others? I have the skill, the intellect, and the determination. I just need someone to trust me. Claude's gaze shifted to the doorway that Marie-Louise had stormed out of. Finally, he spoke. Sergeant or higher? Or the whole damn army? Claude stretched out his hand to Thomas and shook it. You have my blessing, but only conditionally. You may propose to Marie-Louise, but tell her honestly what I have said to you tonight. Relief washed over Thomas as he finally exhaled. Thank you, monsieur. I understand the terms. Claude smirked and pulled him into a hug. No need to be so formal, my son. Of course, none of this will matter until she forgives you for siding with me this evening. Thomas looked at the door and shook his head. Any tips on that? Not a single one, Claude laughed. Just give her time. Claude was right. It took several days for Marie-Louise's temper to cool, but eventually she came around, though getting her there required 3 separate gifts of flowers and several pleas for absolution. At least, with Claude's blessing secured and Marie-Louise's forgiveness earned, Thomas could finally ask for her hand. He planned everything meticulously. He would propose on the first fall evening when the moon was full. He was grateful that when the chosen morning dawned, God seemed equally determined for the day to go perfectly. For November, the weather was unseasonably warm. One could almost believe that summer had returned for a single day just for him. With her father's permission, Thomas took her to a small restaurant on the far side of town for an early dinner. He hired a carriage to take her there, but after dinner he wanted to enjoy the walk back to the hotel. The sunset was perfect as the warm air blew through the streets, causing her skirts to rustle. The sky was ablaze with fierce pink, orange, and yellow streaks, silhouetting the old brick buildings. They strolled past the palace gardens. Thomas had debated proposing among the roses in the place where his lips had first met hers. However, he needed Marie-Louise to be certain that his feelings for her were deeper than what was visceral or sensual. His love for her was also spiritual. Thus, he continued past the gardens toward Saint Nicolas. As they arrived at the church, the sky had transformed to a deep purple, lit by the brilliantly bright moon. The streets were nearly empty, but a nightingale, ignorant to the hardships of the Revolution, sang and provided the perfect ambiance. Thomas looked up at the steeple quietly. "Taking a moment with the angels?" she asked gently. She didn't understand how true that was. Thomas turned to her and grabbed her hand gently into his. "Did I ever tell you about the time I got in a fight outside of the Nicolet Theater? The night you ended up in the Bastille?" Thomas nodded. "After that happened, I made myself a promise to never kneel before another person again." "You told me." "I need you to know that I meant it, with every bone in my body, and I still do. Except now, with you. That vow feels meaningless. For you are worth more than anything, and to kneel at your feet is an honor that fills me with gratitude." He bent to one knee. "Marie-Louise, from the moment I met you, I knew that I loved you. I cannot imagine a future without you by my side. I know that our journey together will not always be easy, but I promise to stand by you, to cherish you, to protect you, and to honor your dreams and wishes." He looked up at her. Her eyes quivered and her breath stood still. "Mademoiselle Marie-Louise Labouré, mon cœur, mon âme, mon vie, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "I prayed 1,000 times for this moment." She threw her arms around him, meeting him on the ground. He grabbed her tightly into his embrace. "Yes, Thomas, yes, yes." She took his face in her hands and brought her cheek next to his. Tears of happiness bathed her face. He inhaled deeply, letting the smell of her fill his lungs. They held each other on the walkway. She was bursting with joy and sniffling from the emotion. He wrapped his arms fully around her. The feeling of her dress rippled under his fingertips as he leaned in, resting his forehead against hers. The weight of the moment overtook him as they just sat on the ground, encircled in each other's presence. This moment was so much more poignant than he had ever dared to dream. One can prepare for the actions and rehearse the words, but the impact of her verdict on his heart had left him unmoored to his very body. All he had the capacity to do was exist with her, blissfully undone by her grace and the knowledge that she had chosen him. Finally, he stood up, extending his hand to help her rise. She giggled and dusted off his overcoat. He was so unbelievably happy. He wanted to run his hands all over her perfect body, but they were in public, so he held her hand gently. bringing it up to his mouth for a soft kiss, his mustache tickling her soft skin. Now that the initial rush of emotion had passed, Thomas gently pulled away from Marie-Louise, beckoning her to sit beside him on a nearby bench. His eyes met hers solemnly. "Before we rejoice too earnestly, I want to be clear that we don't celebrate under false pretenses." "What does that mean?" A look of concern quickly recolored her face. "In order to secure your father's blessing, I had to make him a promise. Before we can bring our union to the priest, I must first achieve at least the rank of sergeant. I want to assure you that, no matter what it takes, I will rise in the army for you. I will marry you. I will do anything for you." Marie-Louise exhaled heavily. "Of course you will," she smiled. "I have faith in you, Thomas." "It may take some time," he replied nervously. "I can wait." Thomas smiled. "You are perfect." He placed his hand back over hers and wove his fingers between hers as they sat on the bench enjoying the moonlight. "Thomas," she said breathlessly, "if you need to get promoted, I don't think that will be easy in Vieille-Cotterêts." Thomas chuckled. "Nothing gets past you, does it? No, I can't stay here. I put in for a transfer this morning." She looked up at him with an eye of both excitement and worry. "The best chance for promotions would be in Paris." Thomas sighed. "I know what you are going to ask." "Thomas, please." "I know you want to come with me, but my promise to your father stands." "But we are betrothed. I can't just be left here like that doesn't matter." She stood up and stared down at him. "My love," he said softly, rising from the bench and resting his hands on her waist. "Your resolution to our beliefs inspires me every day, but we cannot act recklessly. If we want your father's blessing to remain, you must as well." "There is nothing left for me in this town," she pleaded. "Don't you want me with you?" "What I want is to be your husband, and there is only one way for that to happen. Don't discount the power you have in this town, Marie-Louise. Vieille-Cotterêts needs your voice to speak reason in times of volatility. This town depends on you. Your father cannot run the inn without you. World-changing ideas begin where men are free to speak their minds. Nowhere is safer for such practices than the Hôtel de l'Écu. That is because of you, my love. You hold the power to protect that right for us all." "How is it possible to feel so happy and so defeated at the same time?" she asked. Thomas didn't answer. Instead, he led her back near the church towards an old stone masonry wall. "I spent a lot of time in my childhood reading the Bible, and there is a verse that I was fond of. I don't remember it exactly, but it was something about how a seed must first die and be buried before it can bear fruit. That seed makes a sacrifice in a dark and lonely place, and sometimes the conditions may seem impossible. Where can a seed grow but in dirt? And yet, here is this beautiful red valerian flower creeping through the crevices of this wall. I can't accept that a plant has more willpower than you or I. This little flower fought for its right to exist in an impossible place, amidst the stone walls of Saint Nicolas." He reached out to pick the flower. "No," she said, pushing his hand away. "If you pluck it, even for my sake, it will die. Leave it with its stubborn hope. There is not enough beauty in times of war." He kissed her brow gently. She sighed. I don't know if I can be apart from you for so long. Wars are frightening business. That is true. But you are right. They are also the most assured way to make a name for yourself. As awful as they are, Paris will be ripe with the opportunity we require. Just promise me that you will come back to me safely. She rested her head on his shoulder. He carefully pushed a stray hair back behind her ear as they leaned against the church wall. His future was now clear, and yet more precarious than ever before. Nonetheless, his next step was certain. He needed to go to Paris.